It's a very great pleasure to welcome Rupert Gough here. He's on my screen. He's on the top line in the middle, curiously, which is quite exactly where he should be. Um, Rupert is uh, director of the. Well, Rupert. I don't want to get your many titles wrong. But
Director of choral music will do at Royal Holloway, a part of the University of London, and also Director of Music at London's oldest church, St Bartholomew the Great.
and is there any kind of overlap between the personnel in those two?
Well, yes, several of the singers at the church are graduates of mine,
Hmm.
and we often have deputies from choral scholars, and it's a rather nice link actually, really, because the professional choir at St Bart's started around I think '96, but basically on the back of Four Weddings and a Funeral, which was of course filmed. Well, that was one of the churches that was featured, and after that film, of course, everyone wanted to get married, so suddenly St Bart's became quite a popular venue, and that was the opportunity to start a professional choir. And that was in the hands of my friend and colleague David Trendle from
Oh, bless him.
College London, rest his soul. And so he started that sort of link really between the church and university and bringing students in to
Mm,
sing. So it's
mm.
nice to come back to that really.
That's good. That's great. And so, how are you faring in lockdown? How is it? Um,
Well, we call it
every time I try and get hold of you, you take about 3 days to get back to me because you're so busy. Which is not a complaint; it's just an observation. But so all this no work for musicians malarkey. Um, there's certainly no work for some musicians, and that's very bad. But you seem to be busier.
yes. Well, I suppose any situation is what you make of it, perhaps. I mean, certainly for the university, it was frustrating because everything stopped in March, and we had lots of big concerts, and we had 3 or 4 recording projects that we've had to put to one side. And obviously, I've not really been able to do very much with the students. I mean, I can come back to that in a minute, but I suppose I feel fortunate that with the church, that my rector is the sort of person who always tries to see a positive thing in any circumstances, and always wants to be innovative and so is insistent right from the start that we provide some kind of online offering, um, which started with lots of official filming around Easter, and then ever since then, wonderfully, he wanted to keep employing the singers at the church. So fortunately, I've done some editing, audio editing. I've put CD recordings together before and done some video editing. So I was quite happy to accept that challenge of getting our 8 singers at home to record at home and then edit things together. And it was interesting to take advice from BBC and Tenebrae and other groups who'd done a little bit of work together to actually find out what the best way of doing that is and making a really good product at the end of the day. So yeah, that kept me very busy through the whole kind of lockdown period.
Yeah, I reckon the whole world is 20% more IT savvy than it was 6 months ago, because you just have to be, whether it's even if it's ordering your Waitrose shopping online or
Mm.
whatever. Everyone's just had to get to grips with it.
Yeah, I think what's interesting as a musician is, I mean, I'm the sort of person that always wants to maintain control, and as a conductor, you're in charge of controlling the standard of your product, and ultimately, it's your responsibility to deliver the best product that you can. And so it's interesting when you change things and you've no longer got control as a conductor, but you have got people sending recordings in. You've got the opportunity to make sure that with your editing skills that they sing in tune and they sing together, um, through the miracles of modern editing processes. You can actually pull those things together. Actually, I found it funny because then I go back finally to being able to actually work live in the room with my singers once again, and I was thinking, well, come on, folks, you've got to sing together. And it's you've got to
Well,
remind yourself of the skills that you need to
they're
get.
out of practice, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a real shock to the system when it was in August when I was able to get the singers back together, and we did a BBC broadcast of Choral Evensong, and it was a shock to the system, I think, for all of us. Not least just thinking, how does this thing called Evensong go again? We can't remember. It's, um, but I think what's been interesting is even in professional singers who are usually, hardened pros, they're just turning up and they're doing a job a lot of the time. But suddenly they're just so grateful to be making music together again, and the atmosphere in the room. And it's been the same with my chorus scholars when they've come back. It's just wonderful, because everyone remembers why they're there and what they really enjoy doing with their life, which is making music together.
My high spot was Hever Castle in August, where we do out open air concerts with the orchestra, and they were all cancelled. And then at the last minute, they said, "Is there any chance you could put something together just for 3 weeks next Tuesday?" I said, "Well," and we think we can make it work. And we did the last night of the proms with 8 musicians, because that was the size of the stage they got, measured out in 3-meter blocks. And was it lovely? Probably not. Was it exciting? Yes, it was. And did everyone have a good time? Yes, they did.
Yes. Well, it's been interesting working with orchestral players again since the lockdown. After a lot of hard work at the end of the summer, I was able to put enough risk assessments and things in place to bring my chorus scholars back at university 10 days before the other students would come back. So I was able to bubble them quite well, and to be able to use that time to actually work with the whole choir again. And through that, we did 2 recordings for the BBC, and then 2 days recording an oratorio with the London Mozart players. But I mean, that was quite interesting, of course, having all the string players have to be 2 meters separated from each other. So you've got nobody to turn your pages in the string section. And you need a huge space, really, to put together that kind of orchestra. And as the conductor standing at the front, of course, it all sounds very, very odd and not terribly together. But I've listened to the final product. I'm very happy with it. Anyway, I feel fortunate that we've been able to do what we could, I think, before term started. Now things are a bit more cautious at university, of course.
Well, in that case, let me check that you're still on target to help us. I think most people know that the resources we prepare for people to listen to help them learn the parts on the Camino, and then to record. So they're very different approaches for those 2 aids. Up till now, for obvious reasons, we started with a MIDI choir, which is a bit yeah, it's good enough, but it was a little bit frustrating. So we're really, I'm assuming I can still carry on talking in this present. Great. So 4 of Rupert's choral scholars are going to be recording the Brahms, and then Matt will do the magic mixing with the live singers and the MIDI choir, and get something that really makes it easy for you guys to learn and sing the next step. And that's happening this week, Rupert, isn't it?
Tomorrow. Yes.
Tomorrow. Great.
Yeah, I made sure the studio is set up today, ready to go. Yep.
It's very exciting.
Yes.
So there we are. So we're. I know you don't. I'm sure you don't follow our progress by the minute, but the broad outline is that we do this thing in 4 weeks, and then we have a week off, and then another 4 weeks, and each 4 weeks is focused on a particular work. And we've just finished Bruckner, Locus Iste, and Matt was telling me today that the previous step, so step 2, which was a movement from the Fauré, had 1,100 hits in a month.
Great.
Whether that's good or bad or not, it doesn't really matter. But the Bruckner in the first 4 or 5 days has had 1,000. So somehow something's happening. Either other people, either you guys are sharing it with your friends, or I'm doing a few lunchtime talks about what we're doing to people. I don't know if anybody. I just throw this in casually. I don't know if anybody read the Telegraph court circular yesterday, but there were a number of. It started off the Telegraph court circular. It started off with Prince Charles is doing this today. Did this yesterday, and then it said the Duke of Wessex did that yesterday, and then it said the Princess Royal is doing that yesterday, and then it said Bob Porter spoke to the Rotary Club of London. My God! So I'm out there sort of promote. So I'm trying to give it to lots of arts groups and things like that. So that may have helped. I think I'm guessing some of you guys are sharing it with your chums as well. So that's all good stuff.
That's the key.
So here's the question then. Let me put you in. This is like a room 101. This is the pressure moment.
Yeah.
So you're now going to remotely record the Bruckner with a choir of 80.
Yeah.
Where do you see the icebergs lurking for you, and how what's the how do you strategize it?
I mean, the thing with Locus Iste for me is that I really, really want it to be perfectly in tune, and the way Bruckner just sets up, even just that first C major chord, with a live rehearsal, I will spend some time just making sure that chord is kind of perfect. At least with, as I say, with modern editing, as I've been doing with even my professionals, we can fix those sometimes. But when I'm dealing with that piece live, which I think is probably the hardest thing to achieve if you're recording it at home, is that piece is all about being in an amazing church. And I always say to my singers, when we start that first chord, Lord, you've got to be in the middle of this church, in awe of this incredible space that you're in. It's not a bunch of notes and a bunch of words. It's just, wow. Mm-hmm. And then it goes into D major. I'm even more passionate about it. And so I think that's probably, if I'm trying to record things from home, it's trying to get images in people's minds so that it actually transcends the microphone and the score.
And the washing up over in the corner.
Yes. Yeah. Because for me, that piece it's an atmospheric piece, and I feel fortunate that I often get to perform it at the right time. In other words, it's the dedication festival of the church, and you go in and you sing this piece. How wonderful, how magnificent is this place? And that's what Bruckner wrote the piece for. So yeah, those are the main things for me, really. Apart from just singing it in tune.
Well, for semi-professionals and amateurs, certainly the middle section is tricky, because I mean every choral society singer knows that the minute you get into descending semitones, there's a big warning sign.
Yes. I used to talk to choristers at Wells Cathedral when I was at Wells, and we're training the choristers, and I'd be talking about the helium balloon that you're holding on to, and it's pulling you up.
That's brilliant. You see, this entire series of conversations with conductors is solely structured around me pinching everyone's best ideas. Thank you very much.
So,
But what we did, because we separate the audio recording from the video, as you know, which I think a lot of people made the mistake of doing that together the first time, when this was all emerging.
yeah.
When Matt was trying to persuade me to do something, and I was saying, no, I'm too knackered. I can't be bothered. This and it's all shit anyway. Um, I think what we've learned about online for me is if you just try and take something that was great in real life, whether it's a choir or a festival or whatever, and just plonk it online, it's not going to work. It's all the reasons why it worked have gone away, and so there's lots of negatives, and it's really hard to do things online and create the atmosphere. I mean, I'm loving the way you're talking about creating the atmosphere, which is very hard as an individual person. When you're staring at your iPhone, it's not really iconic. Well, it is iconic, but in the wrong way, maybe. So we've been trying to look at ways of coping with the negatives, but then accentuate the positives, whatever that song is, So in that middle section, we had in the audio recording, we had a piano ping on the first beat of every bar.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you're going to go flat, you're going to readjust every bar. And I've got to say that I'm really, really pleased with the way it turned out.
Yeah.
Because then when we recorded the videos, everyone's no headphones, and it just looks normal.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely the way to do it. But I mean, it's interesting. I talked to my choral scholars with the university singers. I didn't do very much during lockdown. I mean, we did make a single which did quite well, a charity single, so they did have to record some things at home, but we didn't do very much because educationally we didn't feel there was a huge amount of benefit for them. But there is, in terms of learning to sing with a click track, and also that, I mean, this idea of trying to sort of place yourself somewhere else while you're singing is an important skill, because if we go into the recording studio, for example, and it's just you and a microphone in a pretty kind of antiseptic sort of environment, a sterile environment rather, you've got to take yourself out of that. So it's really good experience to learn to sort of sing with a microphone, but actually to have the right images going on in your head while you're doing it. But I think it surprises people sometimes. I mean, obviously, for everybody, there's a lot of inhibitions to break down when you're just singing on your own. That's quite an uncomfortable experience when you're used to singing in a group. And the sort of singing that we do, the feel-good factor is the fact that we're singing together as a group. And so often a choir is better than the sum of its parts, to be honest. And there's some professional groups I could say the same thing for too. It's the interaction between the singers that really makes the product come alive. So for people to appreciate that when they make that recording on its own, it's often best just not to listen to it, but then hear it in the context of once it's been put together with other singers, with the wonders of editing and being able to put reverb and things on it, it does become a choir again, and that's the wonderful thing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think that whether it's music or real or business or real life, I think when we started off on this Zoom adventure, everyone got very excited because nobody had heard of Zoom in March, and all of a sudden everyone's saying try Zoom. So and it was amazing. And then everybody got sort of Zoomitis, when it just became a bit sort of tedious and a bit artificial. But the more innovative people become about thinking about it, and combined with just the human nature of adjusting to things. We live in the now. When it's
Yep.
cold, we have put coats on, and when it's warm, we walk around in sandals. And I think so. I think everyone's going through that journey from finding it quite exciting to finding it very dispiriting, and then finding a way to use it because we bloody need it. You know.
Yeah. It's
Um,
it's tough. It's really tough times, and of course, all our so many of our musical colleagues
mm, mm,
are suffering. Um, but at the same time, uh, those people who sit back and think, okay, well, how can we make things happen? Um, are managing quite successfully, and I mean, certainly in terms of the church, there seems to be a huge difference between some churches that are just right. Okay, we need to do X, Y, and Z. We need to create our online audience. We need to engage with people in any way that we can. We need to make sure that our congregation is still together in some way, shape, or form. And there are plenty of other churches that have just done nothing
mm.
apart from write to their parishioners and say, please give us some money to keep the church open. But funnily enough, I think people expect something uh, in return, and so it is slightly survival of the fittest, which is awful.
So I mean, I think I see two parts of the equation. I think you're right. Clearly, you're right. But there is the product you're producing, but there's also the engagement with the people that used to be in the old system.
Right.
So how much of a problem was it for the church uh, to move from, and this is not the music department, I mean the actual church, to move from the their congregation parishioners, whatever, that who they had a face-to-face contact with. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily think you need email addresses of people who are just coming to your church when you're having a service every Sunday,
Hmm.
because
Well,
without the link, whatever the product you're producing is, it's irrelevant.
hmm. I mean, you slightly find a new audience a little bit, and I know my church has found a bigger and newer audience and people from around the world who've shown an interest. But equally locally, the first thing my rector was talking about was right. Well, how can I consecrate the host and deliver it to parishioners' houses so that they have the host in their hand when they watch communion online and they can receive communion together. So
Mm.
that's a pretty committed approach, actually.
Mm. In a small geographical area, presumably.
Well, the parish is not
Yes.
is not huge, but then equally, I mean, we're a very odd London parish, and most of our parishioners actually come in from a huge distance.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so at least it's being innovative and coming up with these ideas and making them happen.
But it and sometimes it's sort of staring you in the face, but you don't realise it. I mean, I had I Matt knows this. I had a eureka moment last night. I woke up at 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, and I had this idea. Uh, do we have the data from all the come and sings that we've ever done? Because what we're doing in the Camino is effectively a sort of a come and sing
Mm.
with 20,000 bells on, or the all the educational. I mean, when you were saying earlier about your not doing things for your students because it wasn't that educational. We're the whole idea of the Camino is all these extra add-ons surrounding it, not just the recording. And I thought, I bet we don't. And I lay there for about half an hour puzzling over this, which means your brain is then motoring. So I got up and started doing a bit of research. And it's interesting because we have a thing called we had a thing in the festival. Rupert's been involved in the festival for probably it feels like forever. Maybe not the first year or two, but thereafter. We have this thing called the Brandenburg Festival Chorus that most of the people in front of you may well have sung in, and it's a pickup choir of 100, no auditions. We just come along and we do a gig on the day. And when we did our Messiah at Christmas in St Martin's, there was always an oversubscription, so we had to have a waiting list or a ballot or something like that for that. And so it's interesting because I had never thought about how important it was to get the contacts and data from the people who were doing the come and sings, because my whole focus was on promoting the audience.
Yes.
So I was focused on audience data, and today it's taken me a whole day to work through from 4 o'clock this morning, and I've discovered that we've got about 560 people who have done come and sings with Brandenburg Festival over the years, who are not on any mailing list. That's careless. I have rectified.
I'm sure.
But that's what I was thinking about. The difference between the product and connecting to the people you need to connect to. But I love the idea that your rector would actually take the host in person.
I think that was the plan. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's well, that's just analysing the new situation and deciding what we're going to do about it instead of worrying that the old situation's gone.
Yes. Yeah. And similarly, we have these challenges at university. That we're under great pressure to try and deliver as much in person as possible, and at least 50% of teaching is face to face.
Wow.
Which is a huge challenge. I mean, at least so far, Royal Holloway doesn't seem to be too badly impacted by anything, certainly compared with other universities. But I'm not allowed to have any public concerts at the moment, although we can have services, so people are come to Evensong, because normally we have a concert every week, and we have a healthy audience for our midweek concerts, but that's all had to go online, and trying to reach those same people online. But I've decided to use a sort of rather different format, and we're putting together programs where I'll interview people and sort of go behind the scenes and just find other interesting things to talk about between the music. But I think some of my colleagues forget that to edit together a 30-minute, like a TV program, is a lot of time. And with the choir too, recording the choir takes a lot longer than it does to give a concert. And there's a danger that we might be spending too much time recording and not enough time rehearsing. It's my current dilemma.
Matt, I hope that's resonating with you.
Absolutely. I think that I've got another project, and we were talking today about what we were going to do for Christmas, and it's really difficult to get across to people, okay, well, we might have done a program last year that was this amount of items or song or time, but if we're making it virtually and we're still operating on the same schedule, there's no way that we're going to be able to provide as much, at least minutes of music and content than we did. Because if you want the same length of concert that we had last year, then we should have started in June. But the one thing that I think is brilliant about virtual projects, when you look around the kind of nuts and bolts of just the recording, is that I would hope that all our pilgrims here are feeling that the input that they're getting from yourself and us and lots of other people is relevant to anything that they will then hopefully and definitely will end up singing live again. What we're offering isn't this is what you do on this note in the Locus Iste. It's something that is fundamental to their singing going forward. And when you're not a professional, I mean, it's even me, it's quite scary to think of doing the whole German Requiem in a term or half a term with a concert at the end. We're taking a month to look at one movement. And a lot of our pilgrims are used to doing half a term, an hour and a half rehearsal once a week. So it's nice, I think, for us just to have this breather and go, how is that how I've always been doing that? It's quite scary. But I think your situation with eight voices must be quite different. I think a lot of our pilgrims are used to being part of a much bigger choir.
Yes, I mean, well, at Royal Holloway, I normally have 24 choral scholars, and most of the time I'm working in smaller groups at the moment. But but you're right. When you record, I mean, normally for an audio recording, we would expect to get 4 to 5 minutes done per hour, and that's just audio. And if you're talking about video as well, it takes an awful lot longer. So I like other people are under pressure to start delivering carol services and things in video format. It's I think a lot more work than people think.
Well, that means that your editing's good. No? If they think that, they watch it and they go, "Oh, that's really good." It must not have. I think that's that thing of when something sounds complicated or looks complicated. That's when people go, "Oh, that must be." So if it's really seamless, people go, "Oh, I must have knocked that out in 10 minutes flat."
Yeah, this is the problem. If you do something well, you do yourself no favors for the future.
Can I just ask briefly, your singers, how have they dealt with kind of coming back to singing, or how did they keep their voices going in lockdown to not be faced with vocal fatigue when they started the term?
Are you talking about my pros or my students?
A bit of both.
Um, the pros seem to be fine, although some of them did admit to me that their stamina had gone, which was interesting, and they recognised that they'd probably not done as much homework as they might or should have done. My students were on great form when they came back, and I mean, dare I say, I think for some of them who are interested in solo careers when they're older, actually found that in many ways they were able to focus on their solo instrument a bit more over the 6 months. And whilst with what we do, I'm encouraging very healthy singing and healthy technique in a choral setting. There's no doubt that if you're doing a lot of choral music within a week, you are using a certain technique and not opening out your instrument in the way that you would do for solo work. So I know some of them actually found it a bit of an advantage.